The Tigress looked directly into James Hartley's camera lens, and for the first time in 23 years of filming wildlife, he forgot to press record. His finger hovered over the button. His breath caught somewhere between his lungs and his throat. The viewfinder framed her perfectly, 300 pounds of raw predatory power standing broadside across a narrow forest road in Bandhavgarh, blocking the rescue team's vehicle like a living barricade. She wasn't crouching, wasn't snarling. She simply stood there, tail lashing slowly, her gaze moving from James to the vehicle's windshield, then back to the dense bamboo thicket behind her. "She's been there 18 minutes, Rajan murmured from the driver's seat. His voice carried the calm of a man who'd spent 32 years working India's tiger reserves, but James heard the edge beneath it. Never seen this behavior, not once. James finally pressed record. The red light blinked. Through the lens, the Tigress shifted her weight, and he caught the play of muscle beneath her striped coat, the way her ears rotated independently, tracking sounds the humans couldn't hear. She was magnificent. She was also completely wrong. "She should have bolted by now," James said, keeping his voice low. "We've been idling here, engine running, 5 people talking. Tigers avoid human contact. It's their primary survival strategy." "Maybe she has cubs," offered Priya, the youngest member of the rescue team, seated in the back with medical equipment. "Defending a den?" Rajan shook his head. "Wrong season and wrong behavior. A mother defending cubs would charge or retreat into cover. She wouldn't stand in the open like this, drawing attention." The Tigress turned her head sharply to the left, looking back into the bamboo. Held that position for 5 seconds. Then turned back to face the vehicle. James felt goosebumps rise along his forearms. "She keeps doing that," he said, looking at us, then looking back at the bamboo, like she's checking on something. "Or guarding it," Rajan said. The Tigress took 3 steps forward. Every person in the vehicle went silent. She stopped 6 meters from the front bumper. From this distance, James could see the amber intensity of her eyes, the whisker patterns unique as fingerprints, the rhythmic expansion of her ribcage as she breathed. His hands were shaking. He tightened his grip on the camera. "Rajan," Priya whispered, "what do we do?" "We wait." We'd been waiting 18 minutes. Then we wait 19. James had filmed tigers before, Siberian tigers in Russia's birch forests, Sumatran tigers in Indonesian rainforests, Bengal tigers across 3 different Indian reserves. He knew their patterns, their territories, their predictable aversion to human presence. He'd built a career on understanding how to position himself to capture their natural behavior without interference. This was not natural behavior. The Tigress opened her mouth, not in a snarl. Her lips pulled back slightly, and she made a sound James had only heard once before, years ago, in a completely different context, a low, rhythmic chuff, almost conversational. She closed her mouth, looked at them, then made the sound again. "Is she—" Priya's voice trailed off. "Is she vocalizing at us?" James's heart hammered against his ribs. His viewfinder captured everything, the Tigress's focused attention, the deliberate repetition, the absence of aggression in her posture. This wasn't a threat display. This was something else entirely. "She's trying to communicate," he heard himself say. Rajan turned to look at him. "Animals don't communicate with humans, James. They react to us, fear, aggression, avoidance, but not communication." "Then explain what we're watching." The Tigress made the chuffing sound a 3rd time. Then she did something that made James's blood run cold. She took 5 measured steps toward the vehicle, close enough now that he could hear her breathing, and stopped. Her eyes never left them. She held that position for 10 seconds, then retreated backward to her original spot on the road. She was showing them something, demonstrating, inviting them to follow. James lowered his camera. His hands were trembling so badly he could no longer hold it steady. "In 23 years," he whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." "What do you think she wants?" Priya asked. James looked at Rajan, then back at the Tigress, who stood watching them with an intensity that felt almost human in its focus. "I don't know," he said. "But she's not leaving until we figure it out." The Tigress glanced back at the bamboo thicket one more time. And in that moment, James understood with absolute certainty that whatever waited in those shadows was the reason she'd planted herself in their path, the reason she refused to move, the reason his entire understanding of animal behavior was about to change forever. 20 minutes had passed since the Tigress first blocked their path, and James could feel the tension building in the vehicle like pressure behind a dam. Rajan reached for the radio. "I'm calling the main station. We need backup protocol for this." "Wait," James said, raising his camera again. "Look at her body language." The Tigress had shifted position. She was no longer standing broadside. She'd turned to face them directly, her massive head lowered slightly, eyes locked on the vehicle. Then she did it again, that strange vocalization, not a roar, not a growl, something between a chuff and a moan, rhythmic and purposeful. James had heard tigers chuff before. It was a friendly greeting sound used between mothers and cubs, between mating pairs, but this was different, longer, more insistent. The Tigress repeated it 3 times in succession, each vocalization identical in pitch and duration. "She's not being random," James murmured, filming. "That's a pattern. She's repeating the same sound deliberately." "Animals can't form intentional patterns like that," Priya said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then what are we listening to?" The Tigress took 5 steps toward them, stopped, made the vocalization again. Then something happened that made James's stomach drop. She turned her body sideways and looked directly at the bamboo thicket behind her, holding her gaze there for a full 5 seconds. When she turned back to face the vehicle, she took 5 more steps forward. She was now less than 4 meters from the front bumper. James could see every detail through his lens. The white spots behind her ears, the slight scarring on her right shoulder, probably from a territorial fight, the way her whiskers trembled with each breath. She was close enough to cover the distance in a single leap, close enough to shatter the windshield with one paw strike. But she didn't attack. Instead, she repeated the entire sequence. Vocalization, 5 steps forward, stop, turn to look at the bamboo, turn back. "Oh my God," James whispered. "She's showing us. She's physically showing us where to look." Rajan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "James, tigers don't do that. They don't demonstrate. They don't teach humans anything." "I know what the textbooks say. I'm telling you what I'm watching." The Tigress completed the sequence a 3rd time. Vocalization, approach, stop, look at the bamboo. Each movement precise, measured, as if she was running through a rehearsed routine, as if she was waiting for them to understand the message. James's mind raced through every piece of wildlife behavior research he'd ever studied. Dolphins communicated with humans in captivity. Apes could learn sign language. Crows solved complex problems and even used tools. But wild tigers, apex predators with no domestication history, deliberately attempting cross-species communication, it wasn't supposed to be possible. "She wants us to look at the bamboo," James said. "She keeps directing our attention there." "Could be a kill site," Rajan offered. "Maybe she's protecting a fresh meal." "Then why approach us? Why vocalize? A tiger defending a kill would charge or retreat. She's doing neither." Priya leaned forward between the front seats. What if something's wrong back there? What if she needs help? The words hung in the air. Rajan turned to look at her. Tigers don't ask humans for help, Priya. But what if this one is? The tigress made the sound again. Closer now. James could hear the resonance in her chest, the way the vocalization seemed to vibrate through the humid air. She took 2 more steps forward, and now she was so close that James could see his own reflection in her amber eyes. His heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to back away, to tell Rajan to reverse the vehicle, to put distance between himself and 300 pounds of predator. But his hands kept filming, kept recording. The tigress held his gaze for what felt like an eternity. Then she turned her entire body toward the bamboo thicket, took 3 steps in that direction, and looked back over her shoulder at the vehicle. The invitation was unmistakable. "She wants us to follow her," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's impossible," Rajan said. "I know." "We can't go into dense bamboo with a wild tigress." "I know. It violates every safety protocol we have." James lowered his camera and looked at Rajan. "Then explain what we just watched. Explain those vocalizations. Explain why she's been standing here for 23 minutes instead of disappearing into the forest. Explain why she keeps showing us where to look." Rajan stared at the tigress, who remained positioned between them and the bamboo, waiting. "I can't," he finally said. The tigress chuffed once more. Then she sat down, her gaze never leaving the vehicle, and the question that hung between all of them became impossible to ignore. What was waiting in that bamboo thicket? Rajan made the decision that would change everything. "We go around," he said, reaching for the radio. "I'm calling for 2 scouts to approach from the east side, through the sal forest. They can investigate the bamboo thicket from a safe angle while we keep her attention here." James nodded, still filming. The tigress remained seated, watching them with that unnerving focus. Her tail flicked once, twice, but otherwise she was motionless. "Main station, this is Rajan. We have a situation on the South Access Road. Coordinates." He rattled off their position while James kept his camera trained on the tigress. She tilted her head slightly as if listening to the radio transmission. "Send Mohan and Prakash. We need eyes on a bamboo thicket approximately 30 meters north of our position. Adult female tiger blocking our path, exhibiting unusual behavior. Non-aggressive, but refusing to move. Over." The response crackled through. "Copy that, Rajan. Scouts en route. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes felt like an eternity. The tigress shifted her weight, but didn't stand. James had filmed enough tigers to recognize the subtleties of their body language, the ear positions that telegraphed mood, the tail movements that preceded action, the micro-adjustments in posture that signaled intent. Everything about this tigress screamed alertness, but not aggression. She was vigilant, focused, almost anxious. "I've seen behavior like this once before," James said quietly. "Not in tigers, in elephants." Rajan glanced at him. "When?" "Tanzania, 6 years ago. A matriarch kept blocking our vehicle, making vocalizations, trying to lead us somewhere. We eventually followed her to a watering hole where her calf had fallen in and couldn't climb out. She knew we had ropes. She knew we could help." "Elephants have documented histories of seeking human assistance," Rajan said. "Tigers don't." "Maybe we just haven't documented it yet." Priya pulled out her tablet, fingers moving across the screen. "I'm searching the wildlife behavior database, cross-referencing tigers and help-seeking behavior toward humans." James watched the tigress through his viewfinder. She was looking at the bamboo again, that same deliberate head turn, then back to them. The pattern was so consistent it felt almost ritualistic. Anything? Rajan asked. 3 documented cases, Priya read. 1 in Russia, 2011. A tiger approached a ranger station repeatedly over 4 days. Rangers eventually discovered she'd been injured by a porcupine, quills embedded in her paw. 1 in Nepal, 2015, a tiger led villagers to her cub that had fallen into an abandoned well. And 1 in Karnataka, 2018. A tiger blocked a forest road until rangers investigated and found an illegal wire snare 50 meters ahead. James felt his skin prickle. So there's precedent. Minimal, Priya said. 3 cases across 14 years, 3 countries. Behavioral scientists classify them as statistical anomalies. Most researchers don't believe tigers possess the cognitive framework for intentional cross-species communication. Most researchers haven't watched what we're watching right now. The radio crackled. Rajan, this is Mohan. We're approaching the thicket from the east, moving slowly. Over. Copy. We have visual on the tiger. She's still stationary. Be careful. Over. Through the radio they could hear the scouts moving through underbrush, the soft crunch of dried leaves, the occasional snap of a branch. James kept filming, splitting his attention between the Tigress and the radio transmission. Getting close to the bamboo, Mohan's voice came through. Heavy growth here, visibility about 3 meters. The Tigress's ears rotated toward the east, tracking the scout's approach, but she didn't move from her position, didn't stand, didn't show any sign of territorial aggression. She hears them, James said, but she's not reacting. Entering the thicket now, Mohan reported. Pushing through. Wait. The single word sent ice down James's spine. Silence on the radio. 5 seconds. 10. Mohan? Rajan's voice was tight. What do you see? More silence. Then Mohan's voice came back, and James heard something in it he'd never heard from the veteran scout before. A tremor. Shock. Rajan, you need to get the veterinary team here. Now. What is it? There's a young male, sub-adult, maybe 3 years old. He's caught in a wire snare, hind leg. It's bad, Rajan, real bad. The wire's cut down to bone. He's still alive, but... James's hands went numb. The camera nearly slipped from his grip. How long has he been there? Rajan asked. Based on the wound infection, at least 18 hours. Maybe more. Without treatment, he won't make it through the night. James slowly turned his camera toward the Tigress. She was watching the vehicle, watching them, and in her eyes he saw something that shouldn't have been possible. Something that made his throat constrict and his vision blur. She'd brought them here, not to protect territory, not to defend a kill, not out of random aggression or confusion. She'd brought them to her dying son, and she was asking them to save him. The world tilted sideways for James. He'd filmed predators for over 2 decades. He'd documented hunting strategies, territorial disputes, mating rituals, maternal care. He understood animal behavior through the lens of instinct and evolutionary biology, stimulus and response, survival and reproduction. Clean, quantifiable, scientific. This was none of those things. Mohan, stay with him, Rajan said into the radio, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Don't approach. Just monitor. I'm calling the veterinary unit now. He switched frequencies while James sat frozen, camera still recording, mind struggling to process what they'd just learned. The Tigress hadn't moved. She remained seated between them and the bamboo, her vigil unbroken. She knew her son was dying in that thicket. She'd found him tangled in the snare, suffering, helpless, and instead of staying with him, instead of defending him from scavengers or mercy killing him herself, she'd come to this road. She'd positioned herself in the path of the one vehicle that could help, the forest rescue team. How did she know? How could she possibly know? Veterinary unit, this is Rajan requesting immediate assistance. South Access Road, near the Chakradara waterhole, we have a subadult male tiger caught in a wire snare, severe leg injury, critical condition. We need sedation equipment and surgical supplies. Over. The response was immediate. Copy, Rajan. Dr. Sharma's team is mobilizing now. ETA 28 minutes. Can you confirm the tiger's location and any immediate threats? Over. Rajan glanced at the Tigress. The injured male is in dense bamboo, 30 meters north of our position. His mother is present. She's been blocking our vehicle for 26 minutes, non-aggressive but highly alert. He paused, seemed to struggle with the words. She appears to have led us to him deliberately. A long pause on the other end. Say again, Rajan? The adult female is exhibiting help-seeking behavior. She's not defending the injured male. She's trying to bring us to him. Another pause. Then Dr. Sharma's voice came through, skeptical but professional. Understood. We'll approach with full precautions. Keep distance from both animals. Do not attempt intervention until we arrive. Over. Copy. Over. Rajan set down the radio and rubbed his face with both hands. 29 years I've been doing this, 29 years. James understood what he wasn't saying. All those years of experience, all that accumulated knowledge about how tigers behave, how they think, how they interact with humans, none of it prepared them for this moment. Priya was crying quietly in the back seat. She knew we could help. She knew. We don't know that for certain, Rajan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then what else explains it? Priya asked. She found her injured son. She left him alone, vulnerable to leopards, to dholes, to infection, and came to this specific road, not any road, this one, the road the rescue team uses, and she stopped us. She vocalized. She showed us where to look. She waited for us to understand. If that's not intentional communication, what is it? James zoomed in on the tigress's face. Through the lens, he could see the subtle muscle movements around her eyes, the slight parting of her jaws as she panted in the afternoon heat. She looked tired, stressed, but she held her position, steadfast. I need to film this, he said quietly. All of it. When Dr. Sharma arrives, when they sedate the young male, when they remove the snare, all of it. James, Rajan said carefully, you know this can't be an irregular documentary. What we're witnessing, if you publish this, you'll face scrutiny, skepticism. Other researchers will question your methodology, your objectivity. I know. They'll say you're anthropomorphizing, projecting human emotions onto animal behavior. I know. They'll dismiss it as coincidence, statistical anomaly. James lowered his camera and looked at Rajan. I have it on film, every vocalization, every deliberate movement, the way she led us here. I'm not interpreting behavior, I'm documenting it. Let them watch the footage and explain it away. The radio crackled. Rajan, this is Mohan. The young male is alert. He's watching me. The snare wire is wrapped around his right hind leg, just above the hock. Severe tissue damage. He's weak, but responsive. Can he survive transport? If we get the snare off and stabilize him, maybe, but we need to move fast. The tigress suddenly stood. All three humans went rigid. She didn't approach the vehicle. Instead, she turned toward the bamboo thicket, took several steps in that direction, then stopped and looked back at them. The message was clear. Time was running out. Dr. Sharma, Rajan said into the radio, how far out are you? 18 minutes. James watched the tigress return to her position on the road. She sat down again, but her body language had changed. There was tension in her shoulders now, urgency in the way her tail swept the dirt. She was counting the minutes too, waiting for them to save her son. The veterinary unit arrived in 2 vehicles, dust billowing behind them as they pulled up next to Rajan's truck. Dr. Meera Sharma stepped out first, a compact woman, in her mid-40s, with grey-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried herself with the calm authority of someone who'd handled hundreds of wildlife emergencies. But when she saw the tigress, she stopped mid-step. "She's been there this entire time?" Dr. Sharma asked. 44 minutes now, Rajan confirmed. Dr. Sharma studied the tigress through binoculars. James filmed her reaction, the slight widening of her eyes, the way she lowered the binoculars and raised them again, as if needing to confirm what she was seeing. "Her posture is all wrong," Dr. Sharma murmured. "She should be either defensive-aggressive or in flight mode. She's neither." "She's waiting," James said. Dr. Sharma turned to look at him. "Animals don't wait, Mr. Hartley, they react." "Watch her," James said, gesturing with his camera. "Really watch her." For the next 2 minutes, they all stood in silence as the tigress remained seated on the road. She glanced occasionally toward the bamboo thicket, then back to the growing group of humans. No aggression, no fear, just that same focused vigilance. "My God," Dr. Sharma whispered, "she's monitoring us." "We think she brought us here," Rajan said, "to her injured son." Dr. Sharma was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to her team. "Standard sedation protocol. Mohan will guide us to the young male. I need 2 people on tranquilizer rifles covering our approach. 1 aimed at the injured tiger, 1 watching the mother. Non-lethal loads only. We sedate if either shows aggression." "Dr. Sharma," James said, "can I come with you? Film the procedure." She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Absolutely not. This is a medical emergency in the presence of 2 wild tigers. I can't guarantee your safety. I've filmed in more dangerous situations." "Not with my authorization, you haven't." "Please." James heard the desperation in his own voice. "If she really did bring us here, if this is genuine cross-species communication, it needs to be documented, every second of it, for science, for understanding what's possible." Dr. Sharma studied him, then looked back at the tigress. "You stay behind me at all times. You don't move without my explicit permission, and if I say run, you run. Understood?" "Understood." She handed him a canister of bear spray. "Just in case." They assembled quickly. Dr. Sharma, 2 veterinary assistants, Mohan, Prakash, and James. Rajan stayed with the vehicles, maintaining radio contact. Priya manned the 2nd tranquilizer rifle from the truck bed. As they prepared to move toward the bamboo thicket, Dr. Sharma approached within 15 meters of the tigress. The big cat watched her but didn't stand, didn't growl. James filmed every moment. "We're going to help him," Dr. Sharma said quietly, speaking to the tigress as if she could understand. "We're going to try to save your son." The tigress's ears rotated forward, focused on Dr. Sharma's voice. Then she did something that made James's hands shake so badly he nearly dropped the camera. She stood, moved off the road to the left side, and sat down again in the grass, clearing the path, giving them access to the bamboo thicket. "Did she just—" one of the assistants whispered. "Move," Dr. Sharma said. "Now, before I start questioning my own sanity." They moved quickly but carefully, entering the bamboo thicket from the east side where Mohan had blazed a trail. The growth was dense, stalks packed so tightly that visibility dropped to almost nothing. James followed directly behind Dr. Sharma, camera held at chest height, filming the vegetation, their careful steps, the filtered green light. Then they saw him. The young male tiger lay on his side in a small clearing, his right hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle, wire snare cutting deep into the tissue. His breathing was labored, flanks heaving with each breath. When he saw the humans, he tried to lift his head but couldn't sustain the effort. James felt tears sting his eyes. The tiger was maybe 3 years old, still carrying some adolescent features, slightly oversized paws, a leaner build than a fully mature male. In the wild, he should have been learning to hunt independently, establishing his own territory, beginning the transition to adulthood. Instead, he was dying in agony from a poacher's snare. "Wound is severely infected," Dr. Sharma said, kneeling 2 meters away. "Tissue necrosis around the wire, he's dehydrated and likely septic. We need to sedate him now, get that snare off, and start antibiotics immediately." She loaded the tranquilizer dart while one assistant prepared IV fluids and another readied the surgical tools. James filmed everything, his throat tight with emotion. "Ready?" Dr. Sharma asked her team. They nodded. She raised the tranquilizer rifle, aimed at the young male's shoulder, and fired. The dart struck true. The young tiger flinched, made a sound, a weak, pitiful moan that barely qualified as a vocalization, and from outside the thicket, from her position on the roadside, the mother answered. A low, resonant call that vibrated through the bamboo, not aggressive, something else entirely. James recognized it from earlier, the same vocalization she'd used to call them. But this time, she wasn't calling to humans. She was calling to her son, telling him, perhaps, that help had arrived. The young male's eyes closed as the sedative took effect. His labored breathing slowed to a steadier rhythm, his body relaxing into unconsciousness. Dr. Sharma moved in immediately, her team flanking her with practiced efficiency. James filmed from his position at the clearing's edge, documenting every detail. Dr. Sharma's hands worked quickly, examining the wound site, assessing the damage. "Wires embedded almost to the bone," she said. "Looks like he struggled against it, which made it worse. The twisting motion drew it tighter." One assistant inserted an IV catheter into the tiger's front leg, while another prepared antibiotic injections. Dr. Sharma pulled wire cutters from her kit and positioned them carefully around the snare. "On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. The snap of cutting wire echoed through the bamboo. The young male didn't react, fully sedated now, but James flinched at the sound. Dr. Sharma carefully unwound the wire from the mangled leg tissue, revealing the full extent of the damage. "Jesus!" one of the assistants breathed. The wound was horrific. Deep lacerations encircled the leg where the wire had cut through skin, muscle, and tendons. Infection had turned the surrounding tissue an angry red-purple. James wanted to look away but kept filming. This needed to be seen, documented. "Starting irrigation," Dr. Sharma said, flushing the wound with antiseptic solution. "Mohan, Radio Rajan, tell him we need the transport stretcher and the large animal crate. This boy is coming back to the facility." "Copy," Mohan said, stepping away to make the call. Dr. Sharma worked methodically, cleaning the wound, debriding dead tissue, applying antibiotic ointment. Her movements were precise, unhurried, despite the urgency. James had filmed enough surgeries to recognize exceptional skill when he saw it. "Will he keep the leg?" James asked quietly. "Too early to tell. Depends on whether we can control the infection and how much nerve damage there is. But he's young, strong. If any tiger can recover from this, it's him." From outside, the thicket came another vocalization, the mother still maintaining her vigil. Dr. Sharma paused, listening. "She hasn't tried to approach." "No," James said. "She cleared the path for us and sat down. She's been there the entire time." "That's..." Dr. Sharma trailed off, focusing back on her work. "That's not normal behavior. Nothing about this is normal." They worked for another 20 minutes, stabilizing the young male, wrapping the leg in protective bandaging, administering fluids and medications. James's camera captured it all: the careful precision of Dr. Sharma's hands, the coordinated teamwork, the young tiger's shallow breathing. When Rajan and the others arrived with the transport stretcher, they had to widen the path through the bamboo to accommodate it. The young male was carefully shifted onto the canvas, strapped securely, then lifted by 6 people moving in synchronized steps. "Slow," Dr. Sharma instructed. "Keep his injured leg elevated. Watch the IV line." They emerged from the bamboo thicket into late afternoon sunlight. James squinted against the brightness, his camera adjusting exposure automatically. The Tigress was exactly where they'd left her, sitting in the grass beside the road, waiting. When she saw them carrying her son, she stood. Every person froze. The Tigress took 3 steps toward them, then stopped. Her eyes were locked on the stretcher, on the sedated form of her son. James could see her nostrils flaring, scenting the air. She would smell the antiseptic, the medications, the human scent all over her cub. "Nobody move," Dr. Sharma said quietly. The Tigress circled slowly, keeping her distance, but clearly trying to get a better view of the young male. She made a sound, a soft chuff, and James saw the young tiger's ear twitch in response, even in his sedated state. Then the Tigress did something that made James's vision blur with tears. She sat down again, 10 meters away, just sat and watched them carry her son toward the vehicles. "She understands," Priya whispered from her position by the truck. "She knows we're helping him." They loaded the young male into the large transport crate, securing it in the back of Dr. Sharma's vehicle. The entire time, the Tigress remained seated, her gaze never wavering. James filmed her face, zooming in to capture the minute details of her expression. What he saw there defied every scientific principle he'd been taught. In those amber eyes he saw worry, anxiety, hope, emotions that weren't supposed to exist in wild predators, especially not directed toward humans handling their young. Dr. Sharma closed the crate door and turned toward the Tigress. For a long moment, woman and tiger regarded each other across 10 meters of sunlit road. "We'll take care of him," Dr. Sharma said. Her voice was thick. "I promise you, we'll try our best." The Tigress tilted her head slightly as if listening. Then Dr. Sharma did something James would never forget. She raised her right hand to her chest and bowed slightly at the waist, a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement. When she straightened, the Tigress was still watching her. Dr. Sharma climbed into her vehicle. The engine started, and as they began to pull away, James kept his camera trained on the Tigress. She stood, took several steps after the vehicle, not threatening, not chasing, just following. "She wants to come with him," James said, his voice breaking. "She can't," Rajan said gently. "You know she can't." The Tigress followed for perhaps 20 meters, then stopped in the middle of the road. James watched through his viewfinder as she sat down one final time, her gaze fixed on the disappearing vehicle that carried her son. And there she remained, a solitary figure growing smaller in the distance until the forest swallowed them whole and James could no longer see her through his tears. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, the only sounds the engine's rumble and the occasional metallic clink from the medical equipment. James sat in the back of Rajan's vehicle, camera in his lap, staring at nothing. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. 23 years he'd been filming wildlife. He'd documented elephant herds mourning their dead in Kenya. He'd filmed a pod of dolphins working together to save a drowning seal pup in New Zealand. He'd captured footage of a gorilla learning sign language to communicate grief over a lost infant. But this was different. Those moments had occurred in controlled environments, with researchers present within the framework of ongoing studies. They were remarkable, yes, but explainable within the bounds of animal cognition research. What happened today shattered those bounds. A wild tigress with no history of human contact, no domestication, no training, had sought out human help for her dying son. She'd blocked a road, communicated through vocalization and deliberate physical gestures, led them to the injured cub, waited while they worked, allowed them to take her son away. Each action, in isolation, might be dismissed as instinct or coincidence, but the sequence, the pattern, the obvious intentionality. James's entire understanding of tiger cognition couldn't accommodate what he'd witnessed. "You're quiet," Rajan said, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "I'm trying to process what we just saw." "Any luck?" "No." Priya turned in her seat. "Will you use the footage in a documentary?" James looked down at his camera. Hours of video stored in its memory. Irrefutable documentation of events that would be challenged by every wildlife behaviorist on the planet. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me thinks this needs to be shared, studied. It could change how we understand tiger intelligence, their capacity for cross-species communication, their emotional range. But another part..." "What?" "Another part thinks nobody will believe it. They'll say I staged it, that the tigress was habituated to humans, that the whole thing was manufactured for dramatic effect." Rajan nodded slowly. "Probably true. You'd face serious skepticism." "I've got it on film, every second. Doesn't matter. People see what they want to see. If the footage challenges their worldview, they'll find reasons to dismiss it." James felt exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd been running on adrenaline for over an hour, and now the crash was coming. He closed his eyes, but all he could see was the tigress sitting on that road, watching her son being taken away. "She trusted us," he said quietly. "That's what I can't get past. She had every evolutionary reason to attack us when we approached her injured cub. Maternal defense instincts should have overridden everything else. But she didn't attack. She stepped aside. She let us work. She trusted that we would help instead of harm." "Maybe she had no choice," Priya offered. "Maybe she knew she couldn't save him herself." "That's exactly the point. She knew. She assessed the situation, recognized her own limitations, identified us as potential help, and made a conscious decision to seek our assistance. That requires abstract thinking, theory of mind, understanding that other beings have knowledge and capabilities she doesn't possess." The radio crackled. Dr. Sharma's voice came through. "Rajan, this is Meera. The young male is stable. Vitals are holding steady. We're 20 minutes from the facility." "Copy. That's good news." "Rajan?" Dr. Sharma's voice carried an odd tone. "When we were loading him, when his mother was watching? Did you see her face?" "Yes." "Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I didn't see what I think I saw." Rajan was quiet for a moment. "What do you think you saw, Meera?" "I saw worry, genuine maternal anxiety. I saw her calculating whether to trust us. And I saw her make the choice to let us take him." A pause. "I've been a wildlife veterinarian for 19 years, Rajan. I've worked with dozens of tiger cases. I've never seen anything like this." "None of us have." "What do we do with this? How do we report it?" James leaned forward. "You document it. Exactly as it happened. Let the scientists debate the interpretation. They'll say we're anthropomorphizing. Let them. The facts are the facts. A tigress blocked a rescue vehicle for 44 minutes, exhibited apparent communication behaviors, led us to her injured offspring, and permitted human intervention without aggression. Those are observable, documentable facts." Dr. Sharma was quiet for a long moment. "You're right," We tell the truth and let others make of it what they will." The radio went silent. James looked out the window at the forest passing by. Somewhere in those trees, the tigress was alone again. Her son was gone, taken by humans she'd chosen to trust. She wouldn't understand veterinary care or antibiotic treatment or surgical recovery. She only knew that she'd done something unprecedented, asked her species' greatest threat for help. And they'd answered. James picked up his camera and began reviewing the footage. Frame by frame, he watched the tigress's vocalizations, her deliberate movements, the moment she cleared the path. He noted timestamps, made annotations, prepared the documentation that would either change wildlife science or be dismissed as elaborate fantasy. Either way, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would never film another tiger without wondering what thoughts moved behind those amber eyes. What intelligence, what capacity for trust, what impossible decisions they might be capable of making. 3 weeks later, James sat in Dr. Sharma's office at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Facility, staring at a computer screen that showed footage he'd watched 17 times already. He was about to watch it for the 18th. The young male had survived. Against odds that Dr. Sharma initially estimated at less than 30%, the tiger had fought off the infection. The leg had been saved. Physical therapy was progressing. In another 2 weeks, he'd be strong enough for release back into Bandhavgarh, but that wasn't what had brought James back to India. "The camera trap footage came in yesterday," Dr. Sharma said, clicking through files on her computer. "We placed 20 cameras in a grid pattern around the area where we found him. Standard protocol for tracking released animals and monitoring territory usage." "And?" James asked, though his throat was tight. "Camera trap number 7 caught something 4 days ago." She paused, her hand hovering over the mouse. "James, I've watched this footage about 50 times. I've shown it to 3 other wildlife biologists. All of us are struggling to explain what we're seeing." She clicked play. The footage was time-stamped 05:47 a.m. The camera's night vision showed a waterhole surrounded by sal trees. For several seconds nothing moved. Then a large tigress entered the frame from the left, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of healthy adult tigers. James leaned forward. "Is that her?" "We believe so. She has distinctive shoulder scarring that matches the tigress from the road incident. Watch." The tigress approached the waterhole, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, moving with a slight limp that was already improving, came a younger male. James's breath caught. "That's him," Dr. Sharma said quietly. "We released him 6 days ago, right back into his home territory. The tracking collar we attached before release confirms his location at this waterhole at this exact time." On screen, the young male reached the water and began drinking. The tigress, his mother, sat nearby, watching him. After a moment, she approached and touched her nose to his shoulder, right where the worst of the scarring remained from the snare wound. The young male turned his head and made a vocalization. The camera trap had no audio, but James could see the movement of his jaws, the characteristic chuff of tiger greeting behavior. The mother responded in kind, then she did something that made James's hands go numb. She walked a complete circle around her son, inspecting him from every angle. She paused at his injured leg, lowered her head, and appeared to sniff the healed wound. Then she sat down beside him at the waterhole's edge. For 3 full minutes, mother and son sat together in the pre-dawn darkness, their bodies touching, completely at peace. "They're reunited," James whispered. "That's not the remarkable part," Dr. Sharma said. "Watch what happens next." The tigress stood. She walked away from the waterhole about 10 meters, then stopped and looked back. The young male stood as well, tested his injured leg with a few careful steps, then followed his mother into the forest. The camera lost them as they moved beyond its range. Dr. Sharma stopped the playback. Camera trap 14, positioned half a kilometer north, picked them up again 23 minutes later. They were hunting together. His mobility is still compromised, but he's functional. She's teaching him to compensate for the weakness in his right hind leg. James couldn't speak. His eyes were burning, vision blurring. "James," Dr. Sharma said gently. She waited for him. For 6 days after his release, our tracking data shows she remained in a 3-kilometer radius of his location, not hunting her normal territory, not ranging widely. She stayed close, and when he was strong enough to move, she found him. How did she know we'd bring him back? That's the question none of us can answer. James stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the rehabilitation facility's recovery enclosures stretched across manicured grounds. In one of them, a leopard recuperated from a vehicle strike. In another, a sloth bear recovered from a poaching injury. "She trusted us," he said, his voice raw. "She gave us her dying son, and she trusted that we'd heal him and return him. That level of faith, that understanding of human capability and intention. It shouldn't be possible." Dr. Sharma was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that, about what had to happen in her mind for her to make that decision. And she had to recognize that he was dying. That's step one, awareness of mortality, understanding the severity of injury. Step two, she had to remember previous human interactions, possibly observing rescue operations from a distance, building a cognitive map of what humans do when they encounter injured animals. Step three, she had to make the connection between those observations and her current crisis. Step four, she had to locate specifically the rescue team vehicle and devise a way to communicate her need. And step five, Dr. Sharma's voice broke slightly. Step five, she had to believe we would help rather than harm. She had to trust. James turned back to face her. 5 steps of abstract reasoning, theory of mind, delayed gratification, cross-species communication, and faith in beings that have hunted her kind for centuries. Yes. Mira, that's cognitive complexity we've only documented in great apes, elephants, and cetaceans, never in big cats. I know. If we publish this, we'll be challenged at every turn. I know that too. James walked back to the computer. "Show me the footage again." Dr. Sharma played it once more. The reunion at the waterhole. The mother's inspection of her healed son. The moment they walked into the forest together, both alive, both whole. When it ended, James pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Dr. Sharma asked. "Calling my editor. This doesn't stay hidden. The world needs to see what happened here." "You're sure?" James thought about the Tigress sitting on that forest road, waiting for them to understand. He thought about her, clearing the path, watching the surgery, letting her son be taken. He thought about her keeping vigil for 6 days, waiting for his return. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. "If you've felt your heart racing while reading this story, if you've felt that same sense of awe at what nature is truly capable of, subscribe to the channel, because stories like this, stories that challenge everything we think we know, deserve to be told." Dr. Sharma nodded slowly. "Then let's document it properly, every detail, every time stamp, every piece of evidence. We owe her that much." "We owe her everything," James said quietly, because somewhere in the forests of Bandhavgarh, a tigress had proven that the line between human and animal intelligence wasn't as clear as science had drawn it, and she'd done it through the most powerful force in nature, a mother's love. The documentary premiered 6 months later, at the International Wildlife Film Festival in Montana. James sat in the darkened theater, surrounded by wildlife filmmakers, conservation scientists, and animal behaviorists from 19 countries. His hands were clenched in his lap, palms sweating. When the footage of the tigress blocking the road appeared on screen, when her vocalizations played through the theater's sound system, he heard the audience's collective intake of breath. When the camera trap reunion footage rolled, showing mother and son together at the waterhole, someone behind him started crying. The film ended with that image. Two tigers walking side by side into the forest, both alive because one made an impossible choice. The lights came up. The theater was silent. Then a woman in the third row stood, then another person, then another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, applause thundering through the space. James sat frozen, overwhelmed, until Rajan, sitting beside him, pulled him to his feet. "They believe it," Rajan whispered. "They saw it, and they believe." But James knew the hard part was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, the scientific challenges came exactly as he'd predicted. 3 peer-reviewed journals rejected Dr. Sharma's paper on the incident. Reviewers cited insufficient controls, potential habituation factors, and anthropomorphic interpretation of instinctive behavior. One reviewer wrote, "While the footage is compelling, it is more likely the tiger's actions were random territorial responses that coincidentally aligned with human intervention." James read that review and laughed until he cried. Random, coincidental. Nothing about what he'd witnessed was random, but others saw differently. A wildlife biology professor from Oxford published a response article titled "The Dangers of Narrative Bias in Field Observation." A conservation organization in Geneva issued a statement warning against projecting human emotional frameworks onto wildlife behavior. The criticism should have devastated him. Instead, James felt oddly peaceful because he had the footage. Frame by frame, second by second, irrefutable documentation of a tigress making deliberate choices. And he had something else too, something the critics didn't possess. He had the memory of looking into her eyes and seeing someone looking back. 4 months after the premiere, James returned to Bandhavgarh. Dr. Sharma had arranged special permission for him to observe the territory where the tigress and her son had been documented. They sat in a blind near the same waterhole captured on the camera trap, waiting in the pre-dawn darkness, waiting to see if she would come. "She might not appear," Dr. Sharma whispered. "Wild tigers don't keep schedules." "I know," but at 05:52 a.m., 5 minutes after sunrise, she emerged from the sal forest. The tigress approached the waterhole cautiously, scenting the air, her body language alert but not alarmed. She was alone this time. Her son had dispersed to establish his own territory 3 weeks earlier, a healthy young male beginning his independent life. James didn't reach for his camera. He simply watched. The tigress drank from the waterhole, then raised her head and looked directly at the blind, at him. For 10 seconds, maybe 15, they regarded each other across 20 meters of morning mist. James felt his throat constrict, tears blurring his vision. He wanted to thank her, wanted to tell her that her son was thriving, that she'd made the right choice, that what she'd done mattered. But he stayed silent. The tigress held his gaze for another moment, then turned and walked back into the forest, her stripes dissolving into shadow and light until she vanished completely. "She knew you were here," Dr. Sharma said quietly. "Yes." She wasn't afraid. No. They sat in silence as the forest awakened around them, birds calling, monkeys chattering in the canopy, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. Life continuing its ancient patterns, indifferent to human understanding or scientific controversy. James thought about all the years he'd spent filming wildlife, believing he was documenting nature. Now he understood he'd been doing something different. He'd been witnessing consciousness, intelligence, emotion, qualities that existed long before humans developed the language to name them. "I can't explain what happened on that road," he said finally. "I can describe it, document it, share the footage, but I can't explain it within the frameworks we've built to understand animal behavior. Those frameworks are too small." "So what do we do?" James smiled. "We build bigger frameworks. We accept that there's more happening in those forests than our science has accounted for. We stay humble, we stay open, we keep watching." Dr. Sharma nodded. "And we keep telling the stories." "Yes, we keep telling the stories." Because somewhere in Bandhavgarh, a tigress had proven that the impossible was simply the undocumented, that trust could bridge species, that a mother's determination to save her child could overcome millions of years of evolutionary fear. James had spent 23 years believing he understood wildlife. It took one tigress, one blocked road, and one impossible choice to show him how little he actually knew, and how much more there was to learn. I've recorded hundreds of wildlife stories in my career. Stories of survival, adaptation, the brutal elegance of predator and prey. But this story, James's story, the tigress's story, stays with me differently. It haunts me in the quiet hours. Not because it's unbelievable, but because it forces me to reconsider what I think I know about the minds we share this planet with. James sent me his footage. I've watched it dozens of times, the tigress's deliberate vocalizations, her systematic communication attempts, the way she cleared the path. Every time I watch, I see the same thing he saw: consciousness, choice, trust. The scientific community remains divided. Some researchers now cite James's documentation as preliminary evidence for advanced cognitive abilities in wild tigers. Others dismiss it as statistical anomaly, insisting that more data is needed before any conclusions can be drawn. But I keep thinking about something James told me during our last conversation. "Science demands repeatability," he said, "but some moments are singular, unrepeatable. That doesn't make them less real, it makes them more precious." The tigress made one impossible choice on one forest road. She trusted humans with her dying son, and in doing so she opened a door we didn't know existed, a door into understanding that the boundary between us and them might be far more permeable than we've imagined. I don't know what to call what happened that day. Miracle feels too mystical, coincidence feels too dismissive, intelligence feels too clinical. Perhaps there is no single word. Perhaps some moments exist in the space between words, where awe lives alongside uncertainty, where wonder refuses easy explanation. All I know is this: a mother saved her son by asking her greatest enemy for help, and that enemy answered. The world is wider and stranger and more beautiful than we allow ourselves to believe. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to witness just how much. If you've experienced something similar, a moment when an animal showed you intelligence or emotion that science hasn't fully explained, write in the comments. Share your own story of witnessing the impossible.